I was 3 hours into a Claude Code session. My context window was bloated. Claude kept forgetting my coding standards, and I had 6 different CLAUDE.md rules that should have been skills, 2 skills that should have been subagents, and 0 idea which was which. Then someone told me one sentence that changed everything. Skills are recipes. Subagents are chefs. That's it. That's the entire mental model. A recipe tells you how to make something, the ingredients, the steps, the techniques. But a recipe doesn't cook. A chef cooks. A chef takes that recipe, goes into their own kitchen, uses their own tools, and brings back a finished dish. In Claude Code, skills are your recipes. Subagents are your chefs, and most developers are trying to cook without understanding the difference. Let's start with skills. A skill is a markdown file that lives in your .claude/skills folder. It contains instructions, context, and workflows for a specific task. When you ask Claude to review a PR, it checks its skills, finds one that matches, and loads that knowledge into the conversation. Here's the key insight. Skills are on-demand context. They don't run in isolation. They inject knowledge directly into your current conversation. Think of it like opening a recipe book while you're already cooking. You read the recipe, you follow the steps, but you're still in your kitchen, using your tools, in your conversation. A skill file looks like this. A name, a description that Claude uses to decide when to load it, and then the actual instructions. Now, subagents. A subagent is a completely separate Claude instance with its own context window, its own system prompt, its own tools, and its own permissions. When you create a subagent, you're not adding knowledge to your conversation. You're hiring a specialist. You tell them what to do, they go into their own kitchen, do the work, and come back with a result. Your main conversation stays clean. Here's what a subagent file looks like. It lives in .claude/agents. The front matter defines everything, which tools it can use, which model it runs on, even which skills to preload. And the markdown body becomes its system prompt, the instructions it follows in its own isolated world. The critical difference? Skills share your context. Subagents get their own. Let me put them side by side so you never confuse them again. Purpose. Skills provide knowledge, what to do and how. Subagents provide execution, an isolated worker that does the job. Context. Skills share your main conversation. Subagents get their own window. Tools. Skills inherit whatever tools you already have. Subagents can be restricted, read-only, no bash, specific tools only. Persistence. Skills are reusable across every conversation. Subagents exist within a single session. And invocation. Skills auto-trigger when Claude detects relevance. Subagents auto-trigger when a task matches their description. So when do you use skills alone? 3 scenarios. First, reusable conventions. Your coding standards, PR review checklists, commit message formats. Things Claude should know sometimes, but not always. If it's always needed, put it in CLAUDE.md. If it's sometimes needed, make it a skill. Second, quick workflows. Generating a changelog, formatting a response, running a specific check. Fast, inline, no heavy lifting. Third, team knowledge. Your API design patterns, error handling conventions, testing strategies. Skills are portable. They work across conversations and can be shared with your whole team. And when do you use subagents alone? Also 3 scenarios. First, heavy exploration. When Claude needs to read 50 files, grep through thousands of lines, and map an unfamiliar codebase. If that happens in your main conversation, your context window gets destroyed. A subagent does all that reading in its own context and returns a clean summary. Second, restricted access. A database query agent that can only use bash. A documentation agent that can only read files. Subagents let you enforce tool boundaries. Third, parallel work. Spawn 3 subagents in work trees. One builds the API, one writes tests, one updates docs. They work simultaneously without stepping on each other. Okay, so now you know when to use each one separately. But here's what nobody is showing you. The real power of Claude Code isn't skills or subagents. It's skills inside subagents, giving your chef the recipe before they start cooking. And I'm going to show you 4 patterns that completely changed my workflow. Pattern 1. The code reviewer. Here's the subagent file. Name, code reviewer. Tools, read, grep, glob only. It cannot edit your code. It can only analyze. And look at the skills field. code review, and security checklist. When this subagent spins up, it already knows your team's review standards and your security checklist. It doesn't need to discover them. It doesn't need to search for them. They're injected at startup. You just say, review the changes in the auth module, and it goes to work in its own context. Reads every file, checks every pattern, comes back with a structured report. Your main conversation? Still clean, still focused, still has room for your actual work. Pattern 2, the Codebase Scout. This one uses the Explore subagent type, optimized for fast, read-only codebase navigation. I load it with an architecture skill that describes my project structure, key directories, naming conventions, and where to find things. Without this skill, the Scout would spend half its time figuring out where things are. With it, it already knows that API routes live in apps/web client/API, that shared schemas are in packages/shared schema, and that templates follow a 3-location pattern. I use this every time I start working on an unfamiliar part of the codebase. 1 prompt, full context map, 0 main conversation pollution. Pattern 3, the test writer. This is where it gets really interesting. The test writer subagent runs in an isolated work tree. That means it gets its own copy of the repository on a separate Git branch. It can write files, run tests, even break things, and nothing touches your working directory. I load it with 2 skills, testing conventions, which defines our testing patterns, naming conventions and assertion style, and component patterns, which teaches it how our React components are structured, so it writes tests that actually match our architecture. The isolation plus skills combo is the sweet spot. The subagent has freedom to experiment and your codebase stays safe. Pattern 4, the parallel pipeline. This is the full power move. You write 1 prompt. Claude's main thread creates a plan. Then it spawns 4 subagents simultaneously, each in its own work tree, each loaded with the same shared skills for consistency. Agent 1 builds the API endpoint. Agent 2 writes the front-end component. Agent 3 generates tests. Agent 4 updates documentation. They all share the same coding standards and project architecture skills, so the code they produce is consistent even though they're working independently. 4 agents, 4 work trees, 1 set of skills. Everything merges clean. Let me give you the decision flowchart you can use every time. Start here. Is this knowledge Claude needs sometimes? Yes? Make it a skill. Put it in .claude/skills. Is this a heavy task that would bloat your context? Yes? Make it a subagent. Put it in .claude/agents. Does the subagent need domain knowledge to do its job well? Yes? Wire skills into the subagent using the skills field in the front matter. Does the subagent need to write or modify files safely? Yes. Add isolation : work tree. And here's the rule I follow. If it applies to every session, put it in CLAUDE.md. If it's on-demand knowledge, make it a skill. If it's a delegated worker, make it a subagent. If it's a smart delegated worker, make it a subagent with skills. And here's exactly how to get started. Create a .claude/skills folder in your project. Add your first skill, a simple code review checklist. Then create .claude/agents. Add your first subagent, a code reviewer that loads that skill. That's it. 2 files, 1 recipe, 1 chef. The chef knows the recipe before it starts cooking. Once you feel that click, once you see your subagent produce a perfect code review because it already knew your standards, you'll never go back to doing everything in 1 conversation again. In my next video, I'm building 5 specialist subagents from scratch, each one loaded with custom skills and showing the entire workflow from a single prompt to a deployed feature. If you want to see that, subscribe so you don't miss it. And if this mental model clicked for you, drop a comment telling me which pattern you're going to build first. I'll see you in the next one.